Hey guys, it's Lady, and today I want to talk about something I've noticed in the Trails community over these past couple years, and that's this weird belief slash criticism of only the Cold Steel arc for being like super anime and tropey, and that we somehow need to go back to the previous arc's writing. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting here thinking, did we play the same games? Trails has always been a playable anime, right from the first game, Sky FC. Now, before we move on, I do want to say a couple disclaimers, and one is I do understand the criticism of some of Cold Steel's narrative execution. I am also of the mind that I think there was a lot of bloat in there and other questionable choices regarding mechanics that kind of just made that arc a little bit more of a mess than it could have been. And two, just regarding tropes in general, they're not necessarily bad. In fact, tropes are just simply tools for the author or writer to use. Since they draw on patterns that people have already picked up on, in any given medium, it can be helpful for foreshadowing without the author having to allocate so much time in their narrative to do it, right? Or on the other hand, it can be a great setup to subvert expectations of said trope, or ideally a mixture of both. But yeah, so with that said, why did I want to talk about this topic right now, of all things? And so I just finished playing chapter 2 of my Sky FC replay, and if you guys remember, there is this scene where Estelle deflects bullets with her staff, just spinning it around and everything, and I just couldn't help but be reminded of the stuff I've been seeing. I guess it's probably only just a vocal minority, but anyway, I just want to address how, Estelle has legit always just been super anime. She is legit just a shonen protag, but a girl. Okay, actually, she's much more nuanced than just that, of course, especially later in the arc. They definitely capitalize on highlighting more feminine traits, but you get what I'm trying to get across, right? The whole country bumpkin, not great with tech, kind of airheaded personality, is totally Goku from Dragon Ball, Gon in Hunter x Hunter, Naruto, all the shonen of that era. Meanwhile, Joshua plays the rival turned into friend kind of role, or slash personality type, you know? The actually book smart and more naturally cunning person to balance out the protag. Plus, you gotta add in the good old trouble past as well, so the Killuas or Vegetas and stuff. And then moving on to Chloe and Julia, they were definitely capitalizing on the whole revolutionary girl Utena and Sailor Moonish aesthetic of the early 2000s, late 90s. And Agate and his former delinquent gang was totally a shout out to the Yankee, Bosozoku stereotypes really popular at the time. Just take a look at JoJo's part 4, 5, and 6, and Cromartie High School. The whole spiky hair and bandana look is just super common as well from shonen anime at that time too. Just look at Renji from Bleach, right? Anyway, Shira is the cool older sis who drinks a lot figure, aka Misato from Evangelion, Rangiku in Bleach, Sekihara in Rurouni Kenshin, and I don't know One Piece too well, but Nami always gave me that vibe. And OMG, Cassius Bright is totally just Ichigo's dad from Bleach. And then just the general setting of Sky just fits in a lot more with those same shonen slash fantasy series that were popular then. Even though the protags are high school age, high school isn't necessarily the focus, right? In One Piece, Hunter x Hunter, Bleach, Naruto, and so on. I'll talk more about the high school stuff when we get to Cold Steel, but basically, Trails in the Sky is full of stock anime tropes from the late 90s and early 2000s, which makes sense considering the games came out between 2004 and 2007 originally. Now, when I first started playing Crossbell, I immediately thought of Baccano. And it didn't quite hit me how on the mark I was on that even, until legit a year later, one of my artist friends told me the character designer for the arc also did the same thing for Baccano. So, like, no wonder Sergey, especially, was legit making me think, like, where have I seen this before? But anyway, so obviously Crossbell's setting is most similar to Baccano's Prohibition era America kind of vibe, but there were also just so many other popular anime at the time that was doing a similar thing. Like Durarara was another one off the top of my head, but I had to take a look to remind myself what else was coming out at the time, and like, oh my god, I totally forgot about Darker Than Black, Black Lagoon, Higashi no Eden. In other words, these very urban / like mob organized crime stuff was really popular between like 2005 to like 2015-ish. And that's not all. Like, without spoilers, even one of the biggest series reveals at the end of Azure's final dungeon was a very popular device in all sorts of anime and VNs that were very popular at that time. And think about it, guys. So Crossbell came out between 2009 and 2011. So just think of that time period, guys. So I am of the mind that Crossbell's arc always got away with its tropes most out of any arc, solely because this kind of genre / setting in general always leaned more towards realism / groundedness, I guess. So, like, I think people can just be more forgiving of it, and I mean, it also goes to show that they did a very good job at executing their narrative in the Crossbell arc. But hey, since we've been talking about anime so much, anime watch parties are one of the possible perks you can get, depending on tier, if you become a patron on my Patreon. Doing so just helps support this channel in general, and my trail story summaries, character analyses, and other content, so if that interests you, check it out in the description below. Now, finally, looking at Cold Steel, we see that the two biggest tropes it plays off of are the light novel protag and the high school setting. You can see, starting in the 2010s onwards, that high school, just as a setting, really starts to get popular, to the point where that's reflected in some of the most popular shonen we have nowadays, like My Hero Academia and Black Clover, Jujutsu Kaisen, Beastars, and so on. So quite different from the settings of the popular shonen from 10 to 20 years ago. And then when looking at Rin, we see he plays off of the popularized light novel protag like Kirito in Sword Art Online. Like, the whole look, the sword, the harem, on the surface, everything is all there. Now, I'm also of the mind that Rin is much more nuanced than the most typical light novel hero, but that's not really the goal of this video. Really, my main point was that the Trails games have always been just playable anime. And honestly, that's part of the appeal as someone who has been watching anime their whole life since, you know, I'm like of Japanese heritage, so I literally just grew up with VHS tapes of Studio Ghibli movies, Sailor Moon, Pokemon, and then that transferred to, oh, when the internet was around, but still on dial-up. So those times back in like 2006-ish to like 2011 and 12 where you had to like pause a video and let it buffer for like 30 minutes just to watch 5 minutes of an episode. So thank goodness for Wi-Fi! Yay! But yeah, so on a final note, I think there are definite reasons why there is such criticism regarding Cold Steel arc and like its use of anime tropes, or at least in how over-criticized it seems to be for using tropes compared to the other arcs. And the main ones off the top of my head I can think of are, one, there's just way more anime now than there has ever been before. Like, even just a decade ago, there would be only 20-ish shows airing at any given core, and nowadays there's like 50 in any one season. So it's just the sheer proliferation of stuff that makes it so easy to notice tropes being used over and over, I think. And two, anime has just grown so much in the Western fan base, which is fantastic to see, but that also means a lot of people who are very familiar with tropes from like 2015-ish onwards, but not necessarily a lot of the older stuff. But like, what do you guys think? I'd love to know any ideas you have in the comments below, and also just please like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And anyway, please join our welcoming and active community on Discord at discord.gg/LadyVirgilia, and also check out my other socials here on Twitter and on Twitch. And lastly, I want to give a huge thanks to all my patrons for their support. And thanks so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care. See ya!